Hi, this is Owen Thornton and this is my vblog, which corresponds with my web blog at www.ontariocrafts.wordpress.com. Today I want to talk to you about two things, bourbon and a little bit about Kahlua. As you know, these are tragic and exciting times in the province of Ontario as we have pulled all American products off the shelves. This means that we have pulled bourbon off of our shelves. Last time I was here, I talked a little bit about how we could replace Cabernet Sauvignon from California. Today we're going to talk about how we might be able to attempt to replace bourbon from our shelves that are empty at home, and what are we going to go out and use to buy instead. There are two products in Ontario. First up, I should probably talk to you a little bit about what bourbon is. Bourbon is regionally produced in Tennessee and Kentucky, and they use fresh oak barrels. That's a part of a requirement of making bourbon. Fresh oak barrels. It's also made from corn mash. So these two things give bourbon its unique characteristics and unique properties. Being made from corn mash and being oaked in first time use new oak barrels. Bourbon tends to be a little bit sweeter because of the way it's made from corn mash, and it tends to have a higher degree of what I will call viscosity. That means that if you were to swirl rye whiskey from Canada and bourbon from Kentucky, Tennessee in a glass, you would see that the bourbon would cling to the glass, would hold to the glass a little bit longer. It would feel a little richer, a little fuller on your palate. Sort of a combination or a contrast between, say, skim milk and cream. Bourbon can only be produced and only be named by its production from Tennessee and Kentucky. So we actually cannot make bourbon or call what if we made it the same way, we couldn't call it bourbon. So in the same way that Champagne, France has a production method of making champagne in the region of Champagne, France, anything else that is made like that sparkles is called sparkling wine, cannot be called champagne. So bourbon made in Tennessee, Kentucky regions is made in a specific way, in a specific method, and only those products can be called bourbon. Everything else is just going to be whiskey. So how do we replace American bourbons that are no longer on our retail shelves? There are two products that the Ontario retailer of beer, wine, and spirits has suggested that we can use to replace them. I'm going to talk about both. One is called Barn Burner. Barn Burner is actually made a little bit from corn mash and rye components. So it actually has some of the elements of how bourbon is made in the whiskey that Barn Burner makes. Secondly, Barn Burner is also oaked in barrels that have had bourbon in them. So not only is it made with a similar corn mash, or part of it anyways, it's also then oaked in barrels that bourbon have been in, and so it's going to draw some of the essence of that bourbon back into that elixir and make it taste a little bit more like the bourbon that you know. The second one is called Elementally Aged Barefaced. Elementally Aged Barefaced is not made with any corn mash. So how is it like bourbon in any way whatsoever? Elementally Aged Barefaced is also oaked in old bourbon barrels that have been used at least once or twice before to make bourbon. Well, I guess only used once because they have to make bourbon in new oak every time. So Barefaced will again be Canadian whiskey going into a bourbon barrel, wood, and extracting some of those qualities of bourbon back into it. It is going to be less like bourbon than Barn Burner because Barn Burner, of course, as I said, has been made with a little bit of corn mash as well. So those are two things that we can use to overcome our need for American bourbon in the interim of the trade war that we're in. The last product I want to talk to you about today is Kahlua. Kahlua has also been removed from our shelves. It is a coffee liqueur, and there are very few replacements for it. And the one replacement that we have is called Bolivar. The challenge we have, and this is the challenge we've had now even as we see rum, because Puerto Rican rum has been pulled from the shelves, which means that all the other rums that are available to us have been being purchased more than they would ordinarily have been. And now what we're seeing in the Bolivar situation, in rum situation, we're seeing shortages in the replacements that we've been using because the demand is so much higher on them and no one could have anticipated those demands. That is something that we're going to have to pay attention to with all of the replacements that we're talking about here when we've pulled Californian wine and we've pulled Kentucky bourbon off our shelves, is that anything we've used to replace it may also then experience shortfalls in the interim as production ramps up to try to keep up with demand in the absence of these other products. So pay attention to those things. As we recommend barn burner, shelves may start to deplete of barn burner and elementally aged bareface, or the replacement for Kahlua in Bolivar. All of those products could be seen to be vacant from shelves from time to time as production ramps up and tries to catch up with the demand because of the lack of the products that we really do want to buy that are not on the shelves. So those are some things that you can think about in buying bourbon and Kahlua, and of course a little bit there about rum as well. I want you to have a terrific day. Thanks very much. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, like button below the screen. Thanks very much. This is Owen Thornton signing off. Take care. Bye for now.